Please pray with me. Holy One, I offer you these words and this time for the healing of our families, our communities, our country, and our land. Amen. So friends, I want to tell you that this is not the sermon that I was supposed to write. I did write it. I did write the sermon on covenant. And then on Friday morning, I watched the television, and on Friday night, I could not sleep because of the testimony of Dr. Christine Blasey Ford before the Senate Judiciary Committee. And because of the emails that started to come to me and the posts on Facebook from other people who were remembering their stories, not just other women, but other clergy. So if it isn't in your consciousness, I want you to think about our country and all of the churches and all of the women in stoles who this morning are getting up to decide, what do I say? Do I acknowledge my own story? How do I lead in this time? And all of that, all of what's happening, not just the stories of sexual assault, but the intensity of emotion. The intensity of emotion is combining to make me feel like we are living in a country of traumatized people. Do you feel that? You feel that? You feel the depth of that. And we don't know how to talk to each other. And what we hear over and over again is the people with power win. And what we hear over and over again is we can legislate so much voice, and then there's the silence. Then there's the, okay, but in the end it doesn't matter because the powerful still win. They still get the seats. They still have the control. I meant to talk more about this moment, this wonderful moment in Exodus with the people who, as Pam said, are stronger together. They're at the foot of Mount Sinai, and God comes to them. But I will be honest that if you read all of Exodus, it is very discouraging. Because here it is. This is our origin story in so many ways. God talks about being with the people, how God has carried them on eagle's wings and invited them into the covenant, which is this beautiful 10 Commandments, which is then followed by pages and pages of rules about how to treat your slaves and pregnant women and the appropriate amount of compensation for a father or husband if a woman is assaulted or violated. That's there in Exodus 2. We don't get to pick. I believe that we don't get to pick, that all of it is our origin story. And that it is the story of how we arrived in this place today, 2018, as a traumatized people. I don't know if you know this, but you know how we have that seal, the federal seal, that's got the eagle with the arrows? So when they were first deciding, it's the Great Seal of America, and I guess it was more important before email, because if you had that stamp, then it was, okay, that's the official document. Well, the original proposal from Ben Franklin was for a picture of Moses on our country seal, Moses parting the Red Sea. That's what he wanted. But this is great, with this motto. Here's the motto Ben Franklin wanted. Opposition to tyrants is obedience to God. Ben Franklin. Opposition to tyrants is obedience to God. And what I believe we know already is that tyrants use law and order, which you can buy. They use law and order to to increase power and to oppress others. They use parliamentary procedures and timekeeping and deadlines and 1 week for an FBI investigation. All of that structure favors the powerful. And the covenant that God makes with the people, our ancestors, begins with law and order, and with almost a transactional promise. Look at all I did for you. Now listen to me, and I'll be your God. Later in Jeremiah, God comes again and says, well, that didn't work. You broke all of our vows. I was a husband to you, Israel, and you broke our vows. So let's have a new covenant, a second covenant. And this will be different. And I love this. Here we go, Jeremiah 31. Instead of stone tablets, God says, I will put my law in your minds and write it on your hearts. I will be your God, and you will be my people. And I have always loved this idea of God's law in our bodies somehow. And here's why. It's because my body knows the difference between silence and voice. My body knows power and powerlessness. I just know it, and that is your proof. And if I did, as my sisters maybe are doing, if I did tell you my stories of sexual assault and violence as a child and as a young adult, you sitting here, you would believe me. I know you would, because you would feel it in your body. And you would say, that is the truth. That is the truth. And so the good news this morning, if there's good news, it's this. The good news is that the people break their promise. They can't keep the covenant. And so God has to change it from law and order to love and relationship. From law and order to love and relationship, something you can keep in your body because you know when you're faithful. You know when you're speaking truth in your relationship, right? Of course you do. You know when you lie. We all know it. And I think, as many of us probably do, that maybe this was the Holy's intent all along, and all those rules that came, well, humans wrote them down, right? But maybe God has actually always been about love and relationship. Okay, so what is God's law? What is this law that's written on our hearts, that's put in our minds? In Zechariah, the prophet says, God's law is to show kindness and mercy, to not oppress the widow, the fatherless, the sojourner, or the poor, to not devise evil against another in your heart. And then, of course, in the Gospels, what does Jesus say? Here's the greatest commandment, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Who is my neighbor? We know that. Jesus says, it's the person that's hard to love. That's your neighbor. Our neighbor is the body next to us, the one whose truth we can feel, whose story we believe. Our neighbor is our ally against the powerful. Our neighbor is the witness in the face of silence. Our neighbor is the one person who says, and this makes all the difference, no matter what they told you down at the police station, or what they even decided from the courtroom bench, I know your worth. I see your beauty. I believe you. In the United Church of Christ, we proclaim that God is on the side of the powerless, that God cares for the poor, and if you want to know God, you open your heart to the powerless, and you work for the poor, right? That's what we believe. So I was going to talk to you a bit about our covenant as First Congregational and our legacy and all the ways God has been with us in our beautiful building. And then I kind of came to myself and I remembered that the truth is God has been with First Congregational not because we were powerful, not because of what we were able to build, but God has been with First Congregational because we were brokenhearted, because we opened our lives and showed up for the poor. We were willing to face unpopular opinion. We're willing to voice unpopular opinion. And we were willing to own our own brokenness and our need for healing. Sometimes in our church, and the longer you're here, the more you know this is true, sometimes in our church, despite our strength, there are times when the powerful voices rise above the others. And when people on the margins, even here, have been silenced. So here's what I have for you that I believe God would say to us this morning as First Congregational. I think God would say, church, you have seen what I did, how I was with you through everything, all those different pastors. Church, your ministers left you, but I have not left you. I am here still. If you will open your heart to me, if you will open your heart to the powerless, then I will be yours. And you, church, will be my people. That will never change. The covenant begins in law and order, and it opens up into relationship, and it widens until it is not just everyone, but everything. It is the wild geese in Mary's poem, reminding us of our place in the story of everything. Lisa Ward says, covenant, this is on your bulletin, covenant is not a definition of a relationship, but the framework for our relating. A covenant leaves room for chance and change. It is humble toward evolution. That means it apologizes when it hurts another, and it makes restoration. It claims, I will abide with you in this common endeavor. I will be present as best I can in our becoming. And so it invites trust and courage and sacrifice and truth-telling and bearing witness. Mary says, tell me about your despair. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. And here is my despair this morning, beloved. My despair is that too often, our church, has been a place of law and order and a place of trauma and turning away and silence. And here is my hope, beloved, that our story is still unfolding and that the Holy One is calling to us beyond anything that can be proven to what can be believed, to what we know in our bodies as truth. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. And here is our place in the family of things. We are the ones who believe. Amen.